And the Hills say next week, but I could see this coming. And I urge people.
I'd like to remind us of two things. One, I forgot to say, the day after the last meeting, I ran into someone that watches these meetings on CAT TV, and she noted that you can hear every single creak from us and when we have our microphones on, and it competes with whoever is speaking from the public or a guest. And so that this is just a quick reminder that we should all turn our mics off when anyone in the public is speaking. And then the second thing is, my understanding is this is a listening session, so that the point of this session is largely to hear from you guys. It's not really what our personal opinions are when we don't have all the facts. I think it's to point you guys to directions if there are things that we can answer, but it's really to hear from you. And so, you know, Mike, I think we appreciate your thoughts. We all look forward to seeing what the final document is going to look like, and to hear from the Hales. They did meet with those of us that were available in executive session. That wasn't everyone at this table. And we had an opportunity to ask questions then, and we did. So, you know, it's still, I think it's a stay tuned, because we don't have the final documents at this point.
No, if I may, Mike, let's remember that the only information that we have is what was in that packet that some of you read. I know that I did, and then we were told that there was missing or updated information to come. So this board stopped. That information is still outstanding, so we can't take what's in that packet as final, because we've been told that it needed to be updated. We don't know that there is a meeting scheduled for next select board meeting. The Hales have not committed to that. We've not discussed it. The $400,000 number that I just heard, annual expense, is a made-up number. It ties to nothing. I want to caution us about listening to misinformation.
All right,
thank you.
Can I ask you then, if it's not 400,000, do any of you here have a rough idea of what it's going to be in our budget?
We've been over this a number of times, Mike, and I would suggest that you come back when it's on the agenda. The last time it was on the agenda.
I'm asking you a straight question.
I'm answering the question because the numbers are obviously changing. They asked us to hold off with the changes that they were going to propose on Monday, and so we don't have information to answer those questions. My recommendation is to watch the agenda and come back. I certainly will be asking questions at that meeting.
Well, I hope you will, because you are a businessman, as I've said before. And the thing is, with these meetings now getting into cold weather, rainy weather, snowy weather, it's not easy for me to get here. So I'm trying to make my points now, and I hope you all remember them. I don't want the majority of this board going to sink this town into debt forever when they can't legally get out of it other than voting down the budget. That's irresponsible if the majority of this board does that without a vote of the people. And right now, I don't know if Nancy's over what 400,000 is or under it, but I guarantee you it'll be damn close to 400,000 when you get through with all the things. Well, I'm giving my opinion. My opinion is, and I'm usually pretty good at this, my opinion is it's going to be around 400,000 or more, give or take, as things go. And you know, in business and working for a newspaper, prices go up every year. So I'm glad you guys want to protect, everything, but let's not be too polite. The citizens of Bennington need leadership that's going to protect their interest, not just the Hales. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may, please, kind of backtrack. On these sessions, I was under the impression that this, although wouldn't be a definitive answer session, that in fact, those questions that could be answered would be answered, and individuals who had concerns would have those concerns heard and, again, answered and addressed as best we could. And if the answer is, get back with us at a later time, that's the answer. But I'm under the distinct impression people came here with the idea that their very basic information could be exchanged during this session. If I'm wrong, correct me, but that was my impression.
Yes, is that, and if that's not what I said, then I apologize. Because I think if we can't answer these questions because we haven't seen the information. So if it's something that we can refer you to someone or we know the answer, we'll happily do it. Who else? Mary.
Mary Morrissey, Bennington. I'm wondering why the board has not asked the Hales about the time frame with this project. I sat through two meetings this summer and heard very emphatically that the shovel was going to be in the ground in September. They were waiting for another grant, and they did get the brownfield grant for $1.5 million. There's ARPA money on the line too that has to be spent by a certain amount of time. So where are the financials on this, and is there some document that shows what the financials are? Because those grants don't just hang on forever. So there's a lot of questions that you should be asking, pretty hard questions to Shannon and Dan and the Hales, because this is turning into not a good project at this point. I was all in favor when we talked about senior housing. You know, we talk about housing in town. What a wonderful way if older folks wanted to downsize and have a wonderful apartment building. That would provide other housing on the market for people to be able to buy, you know, a house or whatever. So it would be a nice kind of circular way of adding housing to, you know, to the market. But you've got a lot of tough questions on this project, because now I'm very concerned with how this is rolling out, and now they're even trying to find out new information. Not a good plan.
Thanks, Mary. There actually is quite a bit of information about the ARPA timelines and the time frames for the funds. I think there's 39 sources, is that?
Over 30.
Okay, more than 30 sources of information, of funding, both state and federal funding, as well as private investors.
Is there a full document?
Yes, there is. And each time that Zach has come, he has given us an updated list. And what he did share with us was the very last pieces. And someone correct me when I say this incorrectly. They are in the process now of going back to each of those investors and doing sort of the buttoning up piece at the end, which takes a couple months to do as well. So Zach will talk about all of that. That was part of what his presentation was, and the time frames. You know, the town staff have been very careful to make sure that the ARPA funds are not in jeopardy, and they are not. And he should be able to give us that. He'll give us the adjusted time frame, I think, and he can explain why the shovel in the ground has moved several months. So he can explain all of that. But yes, we are definitely on top of that. Go ahead, Jane.
I just want to make a quick comment. Much of the discussions that we have had with the Hales have had to have been in executive session. So I don't want anyone to think that all we've had the opportunity to speak to the Hales is an open session. We've had several executive sessions where we ask very tough questions of them. So I just don't want people to think that what you know is the end, and there's far more information that we obviously can't share when we have executive session.
Also, I wanted to just, I'm not being able to recall this, but maybe our town manager can. Yes, sorry about this, but do you remember the meeting date where the last grant approvals were noted? So Representative Morrissey can look at those. I know it was fairly recent.
2 meetings ago was the brownfield announcement.
Okay.
I don't have that.
So within 3 meetings, I think?
Brownfield was 2 meetings.
Okay, so they did show every stacking fund of source that they have approved, so you could look back at those.
Can I just make one more? I want to make one more quick comment. No, Shirley, this is going to be really quick. As far as the timeline, those of us that have been around the block a few times know projects as complex as this unfortunately drag out. They never happen as quickly as we hope they would. That's just the nature of the game. It doesn't mean anything is wrong all the time. It doesn't mean anything. It just means it's complex, it's evolving, things happen, yet they have to make adjustments. So I'm thinking of the Putnam project, for instance. That one took how many years? I mean, it was decades.
It's still in progress.
Right, so there you go. So this is not as complex as that, but it's pretty darn complex, and it just takes time and patience. So I just wanted to add that. Okay, Shirley.
I was actually just going to make a simple suggestion that maybe... There we go. I'm sure, Zach, the Hales are going to come with a presentation. Is it possible to have that put out on the website, under the Ben High at the town website ahead of time, even if it's a day ahead of time, so people can look at it and digest it a little bit?
I think just as it happened this time, it went out on the third. So we put all the information out that we have the Thursday before the meeting, and it's under the select board packet.
Yeah, usually presentations aren't part of that, though. That's
yeah.
what I
So
was
it was.
thinking.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, Stuart, I'm looking at you, even though you're in the. Is there any reason that Jonah couldn't go ahead and put the presentation up on the Ben High site?
It would be whether or not we have all the information at the time the package is released.
So it's whatever we have in the packet is what we can put up there. Okay.
It just seems that it might eliminate some questions or give people a chance to digest what the Hales can show
and
us.
Are you talking specifically about the PowerPoint that they'll use?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we can ask that.
Yeah.
We can certainly ask them.
I think that's a great idea. I think that would be
if they
great for
can do
us as
it.
well, to kind of look over the whole presentation and
Exactly.
give us time to digest that and ask
And
our
have questions,
questions.
because people always say, you throw the information out there and you don't necessarily have time to know what your questions are going to be.
I would just caution people, if there's a PowerPoint out there without any explanation, it may not be complete. I mean, a PowerPoint is a PowerPoint. There's always a lot more information, so don't expect that that's all you're going to hear if you actually came to the meeting or watched it.
Yeah, but we can look at what's possible. I think your point is well taken. The more information people have ahead of time, the better informed they are when they ask questions. Yeah. Who's next?
Debbie Matt, Bennington. I'm concerned about the cost to the taxpayers. I've had a bad feeling about this thing from the get-go. And I remember when it first started, people were asking about it, and it's like, it's none of the town's business, it's a private ownership. And it has evolved into a in-bed ownership from the way I understand it. I tell you, I went through the memorandum and I don't understand it fully. I nitpicked a few pieces out that I did understand, and I don't like it. And I know that the reappraisals are coming down the road for my house as long as everybody else. And I believe Social Security is slated for a 2.5% increase this year. So my prescription plan alone is going from 12-something to 50-something a month. So 2.5% isn't even going to cover that, let alone anything else. And I just see that the cost of this building is unreal. And I do know that Hale promised Meals on Wheels they could have a propane kitchen, and I know most people that are cook, you probably could hit every restaurant in town and they cook with propane. And now because he got that $1 million grant, he's locked into nothing but electricity, if I understand it right. I just see this as a big money pit, and it scares the daylights out of me. Last number I heard was $49 million, and nobody can tell me for sure how much it'll be worth when it's done, and I heard the number 6 to 8 million. I mean, I'm sorry, but I'm not a mathematician, but that doesn't sound like good numbers to me.
Thanks, Deb. So the reason that we keep saying that this is private is because it is. I don't know what the final numbers will be, but the last numbers we did hear was around $49 million to construct it. That is all on Hale Resources, and that is why they have 30-plus sources of funding coming in. Many of those are grants, but some of them are loans. And the Hales have taken on that responsibility. So our piece of it is a lease. So we are not, other than the 2.9 million when everything's said and done, that's coming from ARPA. We will not, so Mike, I see you coming forward. I just want to say everybody gets to speak once before anybody speaks twice, okay?
I will certainly.
Okay, I just see you coming toward me.
Don't lose the point.
So those are the ARPA funds that are going into this, but this is a private development with town town support, and that has allowed Hale Resources to access some funds that they would not be able to access without us. But it does not commit us to paying for that. We may be a pass-through on the grants, but the 49 million, I mean, it is remarkable that a developer in this community is willing to take on this big a project that will serve us this well. But we are not, the amount of money that we are putting into it has not changed. So, I mean, I think it's helpful. Zach is incredibly eloquent explaining how this all works. He's shown us the funding streams and where every single dollar is coming from and what it requires in terms of stipulations and what's grants, what are loans, and, he's very comfortable talking about this. He knows a lot, and so, I think let's let him do that rather than trying to muck it up among us, because we aren't the people working every single day putting all those funding streams together.
And we're not here to guess what the next presentation will be, and I think that we hear the caution coming from the public, and I will speak for myself and tell you that I appreciate that. I'm looking at it with that caution as well. The last time that this board agreed for Hale to continue the work that they were doing, it was my agreement there was because I understood that there was no additional burden to taxpayers, and where there was a difference in annual expense to the town, I was shown where that revenue was coming from, existing places where it would no longer need to be spent. It was going to be instead spent at the new Ben High Senior Center Meals on Wheels complex. That's where I'm at on the project, and until I hear the update, I don't have an opinion.
And it's the job of this board to be responsible for the people of the town of Bennington. We have to be accountable to our taxpayers, and this is going to be far more expensive than anyone could have imagined to our town taxpayers. And I hope that Zach will have a number to say, because I've not seen any contract saying, this is what the taxpayers will pay, and we will never charge them over that a year, because obviously that is going to go up each year if you understand what we're going to be billing our taxpayers for.
Anyone else wish to speak?
Good evening. My name is Jim Carroll. I'm from Bennington.
Or speak it to the mic.
Okay. My name is Jim Carroll. I'm from Bennington. Just what I've been thinking about with respect to the Ben High project and other things in general with Putnam project, I think my idea might have been helpful with, but with respect to the Ben High project, what I think would be helpful to all taxpayers and the voters and those people that think that there are nefarious or ulterior motives that, maybe, I don't know, nefarious, is if we could have a retrospective, a review of the start of the Ben High project and costs along the way, agreements along the way. I think it would save a lot of time and energy for the town, certainly the town manager and you folks. I have a relative idea about how much time you all spend on these questions. At any rate, that's my suggestion. I think it would, personally, I don't remember all of the steps along the way, but I think it would be helpful and answer a lot of questions with respect to funding, what the taxes are going to be projected that will be collected through property taxes. I recall a number that Stu provided, and that was at about the $42 million stage, and I don't want to quote it. Nevertheless, I think I would be interested, personally, in having a retrospective, a review of that information and have it ready at the town office or on the town office website. I think it would do a lot of good. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. I think that could be very useful, and I think it could also be useful just to look at the history of the building from the time it stopped being used as a school, and just sort of the numerous attempts at trying to turn that building into something, and the conflicting information that we've gotten over the years over what parts of the building were useful, what parts of the building ought to be torn down. I mean, it's been a very long road to where we are. So thank you very much for that. Who else?
My name is Deb Hewson, Bennington. I actually went to middle school in this building. It's been an eyesore for a long time. I've kind of followed kind of what Jim was saying on doing from the beginning to the end. I'll be honest with all of you guys, I'm sick of super funds coming in here and putting up these great expensive apartments that someone and no offense, Mary Morrissey, can afford. There's so many people looking for housing in Bennington that are low-income people. Why are we not housing them first? Why are we using a super fund, a privately owned super fund, who's getting all these funds from all these different places? It's going to raise the taxes. I agree with you. I think it's going to be higher. I do. I honestly do. I live with my mother. We pay $6,000 a year in property taxes for 3/4 of an acre because we live on a dead-end road. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And another thing is, I don't want to get too far off track, but I'm sick of the super funds coming in here. I think it's great that you want to make Main Street look great, but we have so many low income, so many mothers and their families that need housing. Why are we using somebody else's, some other rich person's, construction or whatever they are, whatever entity that privately owned Hale company is? Why are we letting them come in and take over the town? These people are not going to be able to afford housing or the apartments. The seniors, he's not going to be able to afford it. I wouldn't be able to afford it. It's absolutely disgusting that you guys would even think about doing something like this. It's appalling. Absolutely appalling what you're doing to the town residents.
Can I ask you a question? When you say super funds, are you thinking that there is some super rich individual that's coming in and developing?
Yeah, the Hale Company or whatever, Zach Hale, whoever Zach Hale is.
No, so Zach Hale is a person. So
where's he getting all the funding? He's getting all these grants.
Yeah, so they are funds from this, the funds that are going to support the apartments. Jean, you may remember because you asked at the last meeting, but I believe it's 17 of the units are affordable units, and X number of those are perpetually affordable. And then another portion of them are market rate. But half of them, and some of them, are designated for transitional housing for people who have been unhoused prior. The funding streams are things like state preservation funds and cleanup funds because the building's old, so it has asbestos in it. There's some funding that was received because the census tract that Ben High is in is one of the is a very poor area, and so there are particular grants to revitalize areas, not gentrify, but revitalize areas that are low income, so that recreation could be there, so that childcare could be there, so that people could live there and be in an area where it's walkable. This is not high-income housing. Some will be market rate housing, but the breakdown was like basically half of it is affordable housing. The company that Hale Resources is a local company, and they have done a lot of renovation. They own and manage a lot of properties in town. They've done a lot of revitalization on Pleasant Street, and some of the family shelter, which is Norton House. I don't know if you know it, but it's okay. So that was not a project they were involved in. Shires did that one. But they've been involved with Thatcher House across the street, and they also did the house catty corner across, that's beside the bus station. So they have been involved in trying to revitalize that area, and And actually, I mean, maybe it's a plug, on Saturday from 1 to 3, there is a walking tour of Pleasant Street because they've been part of a push to put the street on the historic register just because there's so many beautiful old houses there. But so this is not an outside company coming in with tons of money. This is a local development company, a real estate company that has spent the last couple years pulling together lots of state and federal grants and loans so that they can renovate a building that otherwise we'd have to tear down.
Wouldn't it be cheaper to tear it down and take the $2.9 million and buy affordable housing for low, and you just said, we're poverty stricken. What's market value rent? $1,200, $1,300, $1,500 a month? Nobody can afford that.
Yeah.
Mothers and children can't afford that.
Okay.
People on welfare can't afford that. Homeless people, that's another thing. What are we doing for the homeless people in this town?
So some of the housing is specific.
How much?
For
19 out of how many apartments?
Well, we're slow. I mean, I think we all agree that housing isn't happening as fast as we want, but this is actually 40?
It's 37.
37 additional units. And in Bennington, we could use more developers. I mean, what happens is, Hale has stepped up and has done a lot of developing in this town, but we are hamstrung, in a sense, by the number of developers that are coming in and are willing to either develop a new property or renovate old properties. So, we are all in agreement. We need more housing of all sorts, all styles, all price points. And this is one little opportunity.
When you hear the cost of when you find out what the cost is to create just one of the one-bedroom apartments, you'll understand why there's no housing in Vermont. Because the way the federal housing system is set up, rather than opening it up to help, regular landlords have a decent amount of money, when you're spending, I don't remember, but I'm sure it's going to be between $300,000 and $400,000 just to create one apartment, and that defies logic.
Excuse me.
And as far as homelessness goes, in Bennington County, we are the only town that has had a shelter. I think we opened the first one or supported the first one over 20 years ago. The second one opened several years ago, and I've always asked, when are the other towns going to step up? I've listened for a year and a half as the county coalition wants our town to be the permanent homeless shelter for Bennington County. We cannot be. We do not have the money, the resources. We'll never have the beds. And other towns are speaking out. As I've said before, Brattleboro, Burlington, St. Albans are speaking up. We can't do this alone. And the smaller towns. So again, go back to the legislature, because they passed the free motel room program 10 or 12 years ago, never limited it to Vermonters. So until they put a lid on that, and now we have 2 motel programs, I believe. So until they limit it to people who actually live in Vermont and become homeless, we're going to continue to have people coming from outside of the state. If we can't take care of Vermonters, how can we take care of people coming in from others? You want to help everybody, but we're hurting our own citizens right now.
Yeah, we are.
Excuse me, I missed your name.
Deb.
Deb. Actually, I've had several conversations with Zach Hale and some other people, and it is stunning to me that the bureaucracy, both at the state and federal level, that prohibits people like Zach from doing the very thing you mentioned. That literally, I think the number he mentioned, he converted a house in town to 6 units, and I think he said it cost him over $200,000 for each unit, strictly to comply with all of the federal regulations. The most important thing that we and everybody in this room can do is we got to get a hold of our legislature and our state representatives and our federal representatives and say, enough is enough. We are officiating ourselves into deeper misery. The fact is, people who want to help can't because of the bureaucracy. All those issues you brought up, I don't think there's anybody in this room who doesn't want them addressed. but we have our hands tied. You know, Mr. Hale, who again, is a young man, hard at work, and I believe in my heart of hearts that he wants to do good for Bennington. You know, he's in business. I don't begrudge anybody being successful in business. If he can be successful in business and help Bennington, he's got my support. But we have to get the bureaucrats to stand up and say they are here to help the people and not the rules and regulations. But Monday, if I can put a plug in, over in the library, there's a gentleman, Rob Roper, who's going to do a presentation on dealing with issues of affordability in this state. You know, he's done extensive reading and publishing on it, and maybe you and your friends would like to come and hear how he'll explain what's going on in this state, why things are so darn expensive, and why businesses can't expand, and why people won't come here, won't stay here, or are trapped here. But your concerns are mine, and if I could snap my finger, they wouldn't be an issue. But thanks for speaking up. Keep speaking up. Write some letters.
And Zach's father was approved for a huge, beautiful apartment complex on Orchard Lane a few years ago. Exactly what we needed in Bennington. Can't afford to do it because he can't get the funding for it. So rather than putting $400,000 per one apartment, give these private developers some of that money. They can do it a lot cheaper. But it's all these federal regulations until the states say enough and break it down so we can make it affordable for everybody. We're never going to have the housing that people can afford.
Yeah, I do understand that. I do understand that there's a lot of bureaucracy that's going on between the state and the federal, and I know that there's, you know, things you can do and you can't do, your hands are tied and whatnot. But I just really think that, can't we find someone who can do it cheaper? Like, I don't know.
It's the federal regulations.
Okay, then I understand that. I guess the only other thing that I want to speak on is, have you walked down Pleasant Street lately?
Almost every day.
What street did you say?
Pleasant Street?
Oh.
Yeah.
It's not so pleasant.
We're very aware of that, and that is part of the renovation that is going on that street, and it is part of the value. So in the early stages of, not early stages, but maybe 2-3 years ago, as part of the redevelopment of the Ben High area, there was a survey, there was a health survey done on the street that involved the Department of Health and the town to look at living conditions, to look at where do kids play, what resources do they have, what is available to families, and it was very clear that having a recreation facility at Ben High in their backyard would be to their advantage. They also would not have a building, which I'm sure you've seen, the back, broken windows, not very secure, so it would be transformed into a place where people lived, where they had recreation, where they had childcare, and it has a very different meals on where you can go get a meal. So a very different feel to it. So the Ben High project, part of that consideration in, is this a good place, is this a good place to do this project, was that it backs to Pleasant Street and it extends Pleasant Street. So we are all, I don't think you're hearing any disagreement.
No,
at all.
I don't think so either. I know that you guys all know. And I guess my other thing is, how are we addressing getting the Latin Kings and the Bloods out of here? The Latin Kings have been here since the early 1990s. They started infiltrating and moving their drugs and staying right in Vermont. And the police department overlooked it. They didn't take their chance when they could. And I've been out on the streets with a neighborhood watch. And I've seen some pretty scary stuff. Pleasant Street's one of them. I hope you're ready to protect yourselves when you walk down that street. But yeah, how are we getting these guys out? Because they're so infiltrated that we get one and the next one just comes along.
Well, you gotta look at those laws the legislature passes.
Can I just note that we also have the chair of the Community Policing Advisory Review Board here tonight, and I don't in any way, Kelly, want to put you on the spot. I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
No, that's
But I'm
awesome.
saying
I haven't met you.
that is one resource for you, and I think the police department does come approximately quarterly.
Okay.
And they are very happy to address questions like that in public. So, I would encourage you to just follow up with both those avenues. Gang activity has certainly been a topic of conversation at meetings, and it does feel like it's something that the police department has absolutely got on their radar. But beyond that, other.
Deb, hi. I don't know if you're aware, but Chief let me know in a meeting a few months ago, we have a full-time federal investigator here in town.
I know.
And that person was brought here because, as most people in this room know, these criminals who are predating our community were coming across the border. Mm-hmm. And the federal penalties are significantly harsher, swifter, and surer than the Vermont penalties.
Yes.
So that officer being present is, in fact, physical proof that this is being addressed. I don't know if you follow the news. I hope you do. It seems to be an awful lot of federal prosecutions of drug gangs in this state that wasn't happening 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's starting. It's getting better.
So, in fact, as Nancy mentioned, the major impediment, and I had a long discussion with the state's attorney, is
the judges.
The laws. We need judges to enforce the tough laws that the legislature passes. If an 18-year-old guy comes across the border with a trunk full of cocaine and a bunch of illegal guns, he's a child.
Yeah,
they treat him like a child. Wrong answer, Hans.
Yeah.
And, again, I can't stress it enough. Write letters, make phone calls. We have to insist that those people in Montpelier are representing the public's interest and safety, and when they aren't, we need to call them on it. And, I'm not screaming for vigilantism, but the old proverbial see something, say something.
Yeah, absolutely.
I understand, Chiefs mentioned that, but I want folks to know that we have a federal law enforcement officer embedded, not part-time, but here with us, who can help bring the hammer down on these people. I moved up here from Connecticut, and unfortunately worked in the town during the height of the crack cocaine wars, and unfortunately almost on a daily basis I was seeing young men and women full of bullet holes from drug deals.
Yeah.
So I never want that to even think about happening in this town.
Yeah.
But it took people down there, stood up, and made hard decisions, and we're doing that. We're trying, we're getting there. But please, people in Montpelier is who we need to deal with. We need to get those people in Montpelier as dedicated as you are to dealing with these people.
Yeah. Yeah, just don't forget, about the families that, low-income families, the drugs, the homelessness. And do we have a 24/7 warming shelter where people can go?
No, we do not. What we have a singles shelter and we have a family shelter, and those are usually full. We are actually in the process right now, looking at, they're called annexes, but basically appendices to the local emergency management plan, which I refer to as a LIMP, but apparently that's not good form. But anyway, that document lays out what we do if there's like a cold, when there's extreme cold and when there is extreme heat. And so we're in the process of identifying places where people can go when the weather, not only places where they can go, but also how do we actually notify people so that they are aware that, that the shelters are open. So this is not something that Bennington has had, and it has been difficult. We've worked on this for a long time, and the impediment is that several of the churches in town are willing to open their doors for warming or cooling shelters, but an organization that knows something about working with populations, with people who are unhoused, and all the issues that may need to be addressed, needs to step up and take responsibility.
Yep.
So in order to get insurance, you have to have an organization that takes responsibility, will take charge of the training, and will take charge of the staffing. And so, the organizations in town are so
UCS
overworked.
is overworked. Like
They haven't been no one has been able to
No one.
step up. So that is an ongoing discussion, but now the town, the police department, and locals in the area that have been advocates for warming and cooling shelters are all working together to see if we can do something different than what we've done in the past and actually get this done. So there is an ongoing process. The Bennington County Regional Commission has a staff person who has been our facilitator for these meetings, but it is a work in progress, and you're certainly invited to take part and to give suggestions on this if this is something you care about.
Yeah, it's something that, I really do care about, because, any of us could end up homeless tomorrow. We just don't know. I guess the only other thing is, besides the warming shelter, is building this concept of my mind of how we're going to have all of this stuff at the old Ben High. So I'm just trying to place, the Meals on Wheels, the community center. It just seems too small. So I guess we'll see how that goes. And I guess try to just work on getting outreach. I mean, the town can't hire outreach people to go out in the streets. The thing, I just saw a job through the Bennington Coalition, or Bennington County Coalition for the Homeless, that they have an outreach coordinator that's going to actually go out in the field, and they want them to bring these people, the homeless, and find them housing. And that was actually a job that I was really interested in, but where are you going to put them? Where are we going to put them for now? What are we going to give them?
I will say
winter.
There is a group that meets monthly, and I would suggest that you connect with the coalition. Roxanne is part of that group. Turning Point is also heavily involved, and they do a ton of outreach work. You may want to join. It's a housing solutions group. You may want to go to a meeting, see if there are ways to connect.
There's no housing. That's the deal. Where's the housing? Where are we going to put them? We're going to build a $57 million complex that's going to house, rich people for $2,000, a month for rent, not including utilities, and have the low-income kids from Pleasant Street come and play in the playgrounds. I just don't see how that's going to mix.
You're right.
Conceptually, it just doesn't make sense in my head. It just doesn't make sense.
I would suggest connecting with groups that
I don't want to connect with anyone because there's no place to put them.
Here's the problem. In Vermont, the towns and villages used to take care of their own citizens.
Yeah.
And for over 30 years, we've had all these different nonprofits popping up, and they're paid to address the issues. And we have groups, the same person needing help may have 4 or 5 groups working. We don't get the funding from the state to do this. All the different groups do that, and most of these are county groups. So they're supposed to help everybody in Bennington County, but it appears the plan is they want to bring everyone to Bennington. Well, we'll never have the beds, we'll never have the housing, and nothing is being asked of the other towns.
Then you shouldn't be supporting them.
Supporting who?
Supporting these so-called groups that are bringing people from the outside in. Like, there's more gang members and addicts hung up at the hotels and the motels than there are homeless people. Like, you know, I understand it's a state level thing. I know, you know, the judges have to use the law, but like I just wish that our town would really just stand up to these flippin' drug dealers and get them out of here. And like the vigilante thing, you're not too far off on that. He's really not. And I don't want to see our town have to come to that, because let me tell you, I've had a lot of experience with a different gang down in Philadelphia. And the pagans, and they're meth addicts, and they're freaking scary, and they will cut you up in pieces, and they will leave your body parts strung down Main Street. And I'm really hoping that our town does not come to that, because it will. And these people who are out chasing kids at night with black hoodies on are going to get themselves killed too. Yep. And they're packing guns with them, loaded, which is illegal in the state of Vermont, while they're driving around chasing these people, getting out and doing whatever. When they're going to turn around, they're going to end up shot. So we really need to be careful on who are like these so-called groups that are going out and doing these neighborhood watches, because they're going to get themselves killed. They don't have any experience. They don't have, it just doesn't, I mean, I know that people are going to do what they want to do, but you don't chase kids with black hoodies at 1 o'clock in the morning in your truck with a loaded gun, with a bullet in it, ready to shoot. Because let me tell you, what's going to end up happening if that keeps on happening is that they're going to get a bullet from behind, or they're going to get a bullet from the front.
Now, did you say you're part of a neighborhood watch?
No, I was a part of a neighborhood watch. I went out and did it by myself because I'm street smart, but I'm also highly educated. And I did it, and I video recorded, and I put a lot into the police department. Whether they took that information, I don't know. But I also came upon that raid on South Street, and I videotaped it because I wanted our community to see. Because that's another thing. Half of these people in this town don't know what the hell is going on.
Yep, I agree.
And that's a problem.
Yep.
And the more people that we can get to these meetings to discuss these things, I think the better off is our community needs to take care of itself.
Yep.
I mean, it's not that hard.
Are you interested in doing something to start like a see something, say something neighborhood watch locally?
I say that all the time. I will not go out with anybody else. I will go out on my own because I don't trust anybody else. I'm not going to carry a gun. I am not going to garnish a gun. I'm not going to carry a gun with me because that's going to get you shot. And it will get you shot if this is what these neighborhood watch groups are doing. And that's really what some of them are doing. That's the reason why I left. So I feel safer out there on my own videotaping.
I think many people share your frustrations. A lot of us don't know what's going on. And I think people want something started. Whether, I said recently, get going on the see something, say something.
Yeah,
where
absolutely.
you look out for each other. But I do think law enforcement, all the different ones in the area, have been working hard on the gang activity.
Oh my God, they're doing an amazing job, but they're tired.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, how many times can you arrest the same damn person?
Well, but again, you have to look back at the state laws.
I know.
And the laws they've been changing in recent years.
Yeah. So I just hope that, we just keep this open. I know that all you guys are totally aware of it. I know that you're probably sick of hearing about it because but I mean, I'm just one individual that will, do my own thing, and I think it just works better for me personally, but those watch groups really need to be careful, and they also need to just be vigilant, or just be aware of what they're doing, because it's not going to end up well for them if they don't. So I just hope that people stay safe out in those groups, and that we just keep on, I'll write letters, I'll do whatever, I'll keep speaking up till something changes, because, I would love to do this, see something, say something. I've always done that, but I think that with the gangs that have infiltrated in here so much, it scares the shit out of people, and they don't want to say anything.
Yep. And you're right.
I mean, I could have got killed doing a video from that live that I did on South Street. Seriously. Those gang members can find out who I am, where I live. And that's why a lot of people are not doing the see something, say something, if you see something. It's just,
But several years ago, when it was national, and it went well across the country, I really think we need to get going and do something rather than talking about it, because I've heard a lot now for a year.
I'm sure.
If everybody's on board, and I think several years ago, pretty much everybody, it's not keeping, you know who's in your neighborhood. Your neighbor goes away, keep an eye on my house. That's how it used to be. Everybody looked out for each other, and I think we need to have a system like that again.
I do as well, but I think the problem is that a lot of people that are in apartment complexes on Pleasant Street have a drug dealer, who
Oh, it's not just Pleasant Street.
Oh, no, I know. I'm just using it. I shouldn't probably use Pleasant Street as an example all the time, because it's not just on Pleasant Street, whether it be School Street or Lincoln Street or whatever, River Street, it's Benmont. That people living in apartment complexes might have a dealer next to them, and if they rat them out, because they're going to find out eventually who ratted them out, they're probably going to end up dead. And so, we need to somehow make our community more aware of what's going on, how to be vigilant, how to stay safe, and how to be able to report things anonymously. Because I don't want anyone to get hurt out there, and it's neighborhoods too, not apartment buildings. Exactly.
It's homes. Yep.
It is. I mean, there are mothers and daughters and fathers and sons and switching around, whatever, that are stash houses, and I don't know. It's all over, so I just hope that...
I think practically everybody shares your concern, and we need to stop waiting for somebody to do something. I think a group of us need to get together, figure out what it is. I know the police department, the BBC, others are talking, and I've said we really need to start having public meetings. I think a lot of people would turn out.
Yeah, I think that public meetings with the Bennington Police Department would be a wonderful thing, and with the Sheriff's Department, so the community members can get to know them. And, I know that they're wiped out. I know they're tired. I know that some of them have switched positions because they're burnt out. And that's still happening. And we have a lot of good police officers, but a lot of them are young, and they're new. And I don't know. I wish it could be resolved a little bit sooner, but I know it's going to be a long haul for the community, so.
Well, I think the public is willing to step up. It's just nobody knows what to do, and I really think we need to have more meetings to get people organized, to know what to look for, who to contact. And I know this is all in the police department, but I think it really needs to be one big meeting. This is what we're all going to work towards, and look out and help each other, and the businesses and the neighborhoods, and
and especially the businesses. I mean, I think it's just sad that I drive down Main Street, or I'm coming back from Pownell, and Beach Street's right there, and I just see girls that are not even barely dressed, then they're walking down the street just wigging out because they're all cracked out. Or, you know, you got Jose over at the Bennington Library just nodding out because he's so high in heroin. Like, I don't want to see that on my damn street anymore. I don't.
It didn't used to be allowed. People were told to move along. And
Yeah, and then they move along to the back. They move along
Well,
where they can hide. I mean,
But this is what we need the discussions about. Bennington, what have you had enough of? And then we're going to say, okay, we're going to come together and say, we're going to stop tolerating this. It wasn't tolerated before, and everybody's kind of sitting back. Many in Bennington are saying and thinking the same thing you are.
oh, I'm sure. I'm definitely sure. I would like to meet some of those people. You know, I definitely would, so.
Well, hopefully within the next month.
Yeah.
We
let's do
can
that.
have a big
I thank
meeting.
you. I mean, I know that there's not anything that you guys can do. Like,
Oh, yeah, there is. Yeah, there is. We have to push that
you
meeting
have
to take
yeah,
place.
like you have to push it as far as you can, because I just, you know, I used to work for United Counseling Service. They suck. Their therapy wait for just a therapist for someone like me who has depression and anxiety is 45 days. And I'm lucky if I get to meet my counselor a second time, let alone a drug addict who's looking for help. There's no place for addicts to go right now to get help. Nowhere.
Well, remember, our state got a pile of federal bailout money from COVID.
And where did it all go?
Well, you know, it would have been nice if we'd had a huge facility created.
Yeah, and we
People
need
were
one here
homeless.
in town, and I think Ben High is the perfect spot for it.
Thank you, Deb. Other comments? Kelly? Yeah, you're wanting to come up? Come on up.
Tell me to shut up. Anyway, Kelly Carroll from Bennington. First of all, as a public citizen, let me thank you for doing these. Okay. Secondly, only because you mentioned me being the chair of CPARB, I just want to comment, and I want to be very, very clear. I am not representing the board. That would be inappropriate. But I did want to comment about the drug dealing, the frustrations, and you are far from alone in that. Clark is 100% on point, where we do have somebody from the federal government working with the police department. And part of the reason for that is because federal charges will stick, and Vermont laws have made it very, very difficult and very unsafe to be out on the street. So again, I apologize, I am not speaking for the board, but there is a frustration, and I'm not speaking for the police department either, but there is a frustration all around from watching repeated arrest after arrest after arrest. And I have that same problem in my neighborhood.
Yep.
As far as neighborhood watches go, I think the concern on that is the safety for those that are out on the streets, and possibly somebody who is an innocent bystander not even involved in that. So as far as see something, say something, absolutely. And I think, you know, if you do talk to some of our officers and say, well, what do you need? A lot of them are going to say, communicate with us. Tell us what you see. Again, because of some of the laws and the way that the statutes have been changed over the recent few years with the legislature, it is more difficult to bring cases to the courts. I'm not an expert. Erica Marthage can certainly speak to that a whole lot better than I can, but I certainly understand the frustration. CPARB meets in this very room the third Thursday of every month at 6 o'clock. You can comment through our webpage, and I encourage you to come and get involved. The chief or one of his representatives is at our meeting usually all the time, and it's, you know, it's interactive, so come out. And we also do some listening sessions around the community, and we'll be working on getting some dates out for November and stuff like that coming up. So anyway, again, personal opinion, not speaking for the board or the police department, but I just wanted to clarify that they are trying. It just takes a long time, and I'm gonna tell you something, I've gone through it in my neighborhood, and I'm one of those mouthy peoples out there going, bah, 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 get out. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
They're very short-staffed right now. Very, very short-staffed.
Other thoughts?
Do any of you want to become a police officer?
Can we go the second round now?
What?
I got older.
You're, oh, sorry.
I agree with 99% of what you said.
All right.
But I'm gonna bother Josh.
Okay, and take criticism.
What I think the common denominator here is, in my mind, and I'm not criticizing any of these of past boards, but it is priorities of the town and leadership of the town. That's why I pushed with Nancy 2 or 3 years a mayor. Now, I don't know if mayor is the perfect, perfect thing for Bennington, but we need somebody that's going to represent the people and what their priorities are. And I'm going to switch this around now to Benmont. Benmont, the money we spent on that was not needed at this time. And nobody seems to give me an answer on what the town taxpayers paid for what they did down there on Benmont, down by the bridge and by Apollo and everything else. I know that the grant, you got a grant, but that was only for design from BCRC. But the money in our crew, that was a lot of money. Gotta be a lot of money. I do have a petition out there to make it so you can't just go up and we'll get signatures at the vote out in November 5th. But we need to prioritize what this lady's talking about and others. What is going to bring Bennington back to where it used to be 30 years ago, 50 years ago, 5 years ago? You know, this project with the Ben High has taken way too long, and it isn't even started yet. The Putnam Block spent $34 million to date and has brought us nothing. You don't see people getting off the highway to come and say, oh, our $34 million investment. I haven't seen anybody come off the highway and say, oh, look at that. You can't even tell it's different. And they still got the old Greenberg sign up, the metal, the construction, the skeleton. Can you please get somebody to take the goddamn thing down? I mean, come on. What it would cost? 50 bucks, 100 bucks? Somebody to come along with one of those buzz saws and take it down? You come in from the west, it doesn't look like anything's changed. You know? And if we want to draw people to Bennington, you have to have attraction, you have to have a cleaner environment like she's saying, and this what the lady's talking about isn't on your heads. It goes back to local representatives going up, representing us, Welch and all those people that are up there, the governor. We can't do it alone. And some of our money that we're going to be putting into all of these different things that you people like, your pet projects, we could be maybe getting more police. And that's what I'm saying about priorities. And when I forgot what I originally was going to come back up here. Oh, you, Jeannie, said that it's a private deal. It's not a private deal. There's no way in hell Hale's thing is private. If it was private, Hale could do it by himself. The town is his partner. If you, the town people, said, no, we're not going to fund this, guess what? It wouldn't be done. Hale would be out of this tomorrow. And you all know it. So I'll rest my case, but what this lady said and others say, and these meetings are constructive, but I agree with Sarah over there about the meetings, the regular meetings maybe being too long. I don't think they're too long. I think you need to concentrate on the public's business and stop entertaining all of these nonprofits. And she's not the only one, this lady, that I've heard about UCS. And there's other people I've tried to help through UCS and other, I won't name different organizations, but they're not doing virtually what they should be doing for the pay that they get. And that's where it comes back on your backs. Why can't I get a warming shelter? Well, for God's sakes, you could have taken some of that ARPA money, maybe, legally, I don't know, and created a warming shelter. You had $3 million, $2 million. you know, if you really care about the people of this town, put yourself in their place. And I have I've all my life been in a wheelchair, so I can see from a different angle than you people. I know what it's like, but I've had a great life. I've had a great, great life. I don't bitch about nothing. I've done everything I've wanted to do. Now that I'm getting older, it's tougher to do things, but I have no regrets at all. But I can see from where she's talking about and others are talking about, and the drugs in this town is terrible. And we can't root it out if we don't have more cops, and also if the cops then arrest them, in our laws in the state and or the feds, just let them loose. So I am hoping, and I know it's not the place to do it, but I hope we get a better president than what we've had. I want to go back to Trump. So
Can
anyway.
I just want to address several things you just said. So our budget for the police department budgets for a full police department. So it is not that we've shifted money away from the police department. They recruit. If they can hire and the person that they hire can complete all their training, then we've got another officer. But in no way, I don't want you to think that any select board, and like I'm going to guess from the very beginning, but it's certainly been true for the last 8 years, has ever remove money from the police department's budget.
I didn't say that at all.
Well, you said we could reprioritize and then maybe hire some more officers. I'm just saying hiring officers is completely separate from the budget. We have the money there to do it.
I agree with you.
Two, the cost, we are partners with the Hales so that they can access a lot of the funding that they're getting. But the ARPA funds are our part. That is what we have given or will be giving to that project. And so that doesn't change. And third, warming shelter, sorry, you raised all these issues.
I will.
Warming shelter, as was mentioned earlier, the money is not the issue with a warming shelter. It's having an organization that has the bandwidth to take on the project. And it isn't just hiring more people because, as you know, the funding, ARPA funding, is short-term funding. It's not going to keep something going. It's that organizations are saying, we don't have the bandwidth to do it. So it is not, again, because of money. It's because they can't do it. They don't have the staffing. They don't have, it's not in their mission, whatever. I mean, there are all kinds of reasons for why it doesn't happen. But again, I think, we're not disagreeing on priorities of hiring police officers or having warming shelters or making sure that we keep costs as low as they can be. But I do not want you to blame the select board for not putting money where these things matter, because the money is there. It is really how to do it. And all of us are in meetings all the time with community organizations trying to figure out how to do these things, because the town doesn't have the expertise to do most of these things, but we are willing to be partners where we can be. So we don't disagree on what we want to see done, but I do not want you making comments about the select board taking money away from.
I didn't say that at all.
Good projects.
I didn't say that at all. But you did take money out of the DPW. Instead of fixing the downtown streets of Bennington, you picked a project down on the end of Benmont that did not need to be done. That was done with taxpayer money. That was done out of road work money. Correct me if I'm not right.
That was DPW's
budget.
No, the select board didn't decide that. The DPW has a list of projects that they think are most important to do, and that project, the Benmont project, was one that needed to be done. And I don't know about you, but everyone I've talked to that's driven down that street since the stripes have been in the middle think it's really great. And I have done all those turns and You know, I can get into the gas station, all of it works
Do you think the
beautifully.
sidewalks in downtown Bennington need to be redone?
Mike, let me jump in for a second, because
Yeah.
I think that there's an important point here. We're listening, and we're not disagreeing with some of the general concepts, but opinion is important to separate from what we know to be reality or fact or true. You are of the opinion that the Benmont project, as it was done, did not need to be done. And with all due respect, sir, that's your opinion, and I appreciate that. The deciding factor was, here are a number of issues on Benmont, here are a number of potential solutions. Some of them speed, some of them hairpin turns, and that list went on. And in any other, just like in any other area of town, those things are reviewed and evaluated, and potential solutions are brought forth. So to say that it was done unnecessarily, I respect that that's your opinion. That is not necessarily the opinion of all or others. I am of the opinion that that was a complete mess, a disaster, unsafe. I drive it every day, and I am feeling much safer after the work has been completed.
That's your opinion.
As is yours, Mike.
And we both gave our opinions.
You said it wasn't necessary.
Now, as a select board member, could you answer this one? Could that money been better spent, not better, could have been spent instead of there to do the sidewalks in downtown Bennington?
No, it was specific money for that project.
You got that money from the taxpayers?
No, we got that money from the state. That was state money that was specifically earmarked for that project. It's a different set of funding that we would use for sidewalks. And as you know, there is a sidewalk priority area project list, and sidewalks move way slower than any of us want. You know, there are parts of town that many of us think should have sidewalks that have no sidewalks at all.
Did we use our own crew?
Yes, we did, to cut down the costs.
Okay, so we could have used our crew to do some of the sidewalks in Bennington this year.
Apparently, Benmont needed to be done. So, I think Ed's point is well taken. We're just going to, DPW was part of this conversation. This was considered a priority, and it does appear to be safer now than it was before.
I don't drive anymore, only this thing, but when I did drive, I never had a problem down there.
I'm happy to hear it. I'm very happy to hear it.
And I'm not a very good driver in this thing or my other car.
I have seen you on the road. That is true.
Don't criticize.
That is true.
I don't criticize you. All I'm saying is priorities. You people got these jobs, you were voted in, leadership. What are the priorities? First, second, and third. What's going to make our community better? That's my point. And right now, when these people come out in front of you, UCS or anybody else, and they give you their band of, once in a while you could say, hey, do it or get off the pot. You don't have a warming shelter. That you and I have had this discussion. You're right. It's not the town of Bennington or the select board to create a warming shelter. You may help them get some money, but these organizations are not doing their job. They should be creating a warming shelter. Simple. Simple. No more 5 years, 10 years, 100 years. Create a warming shelter, and they don't do it. But they're not going to do it unless the town leadership says to them publicly, do it, or don't come in front of us anymore.
I will remind people that once a year, on the ballot, the people of Bennington vote whether to give money to a wide range of organizations. Not all the ones that have been mentioned today ask for town funding. Some of them do. And that is a place where the taxpayers directly decide who gets taxpayer money. The select board does not decide. All we do is make sure that they do their petitions or get their information on time. And if they don't, then they don't go on the ballot.
That's chump change. That's chump change. 5,000 here, 7,000 there.
But that's what
not
we're
gonna
talking
create-
about.
That is what we're talking about,
That's
Mike.
all the taxpayers give.
That's right. But you can help them get grants to do a warming shelter. If you can help Zach Hale come up to $50 million, you can't tell me you can't get a grant somewhere or open up Facebook to get volunteer money so Bennington can build a warming shelter.
I'll just remind you that we have offered to do that. So someone has to step forward, you know?
Mike, remember what Jeannie said a few minutes ago about the lack of the organization to step forward, because it's not a money issue. It's first a resource issue, a people issue, a training issue, a mission issue. So I want to repeat what she said earlier, because what you guys are saying is not falling on deaf ears. And we're not just deflecting and shooting down what you're saying. Your input is exactly what these meetings are for, and they are very much appreciated. That we are not going to change something tonight. There isn't going to be a warming shelter initiative started tomorrow because of this conversation, but it might lead to something good that can come of it.
But you folks need to step up to them and say, we just had a meeting, and here's what a main topic was. We're not going to entertain seeing you every other week promoting your whatever if you don't capitalize on a warming shelter. You can do that for me, you can do it for this lady, you can do it for the whole town. You don't have to sit there and just be polite all the time. They come in front of you.
I've not been accused of being polite, ever.
Well, you're rude to me all the time, but I don't mind.
Good, I'm glad we're clear on that.
But I'm saying, if I was on the board, which I'm not, but this next year there's going to be hopefully 3 or 4 new ones on the board, and I am going to beat them up the same way I'm beating you up. Priorities, don't listen to the garbage that comes in front of you under a regular meeting. If they're not living up to what they should be, as an organization, point that out. If you don't want to point it out publicly, point it out behind the scenes, and maybe you people have. But it is tiresome to hear about a warming shelter, and I'm sitting there going, well, doesn't our town care about people out in the cold? I knew a guy a couple of years ago that died because he couldn't get, he was a wacko guy, but he was a hell of a guy.
I do want to reiterate that that process is going on right now. Through identifying and figuring out how we can do this, who takes the lead, how and so we're doing it under the emergency management plan, which we haven't done before. And that was a community led initiative to get those appendices in the emergency management plan. So, I think...
And that's where it belongs.
And that's where it belongs. Yeah, I think it makes more sense. So we're in the process now, and the reason I'm using the word process is because we don't know exactly how it's going to play out, but it looks like, it does look like we will be able to both have informal and formal places that will be warming and cooling shelters. So that's the plan, and it comes back to this board once we have... For
this year, or...
Well, this would be, the plan is updated, the plan has to be readopted every year, but we can work on these appendices at any point. So we're doing that ongoing, and we've actually been meeting for several months. And the process is slow. It is, but everyone is a willing partner, and so once there is something to show, it'll come back to the select board for the select board's approval, and obviously that'll be at a meeting, so the community will also be able to have input on it. So, I'm feeling more positive about this than I have, and I have been cajoling people since before COVID. The idea of having warming and cooling shelters in town became a formal issue, I don't know, probably 7, 8 years ago at this point. I mean, it's been a long time this has been worked on.
So if somebody right now calls the police station and says, could you please give me some help? I'm freezing my croquis off.
Yep, they call the shelter and see if there's a way. And I mean, as you probably know, there have been times when the police department has allowed an individual to sleep in their lobby because there was no other place.
That is a public way of getting 1 or 2 people so they don't freeze in Bennington. The police know it. All of these agencies know it. So if somebody calls an agency and say, well, we don't have it, but call the police and you can sleep in there.
No, that's not what they say. They say, call the police, and then the police do the legwork to try and find them an
Police-
appropriate place
okay,
to sleep.
they will.
Okay?
All right.
That's the idea.
Well, that's
But
fine.
anyway, so, more to come on that. Yeah.
I'll leave
Jeannie,
you alone.
are these meetings out to the public so citizens can go and participate?
No, they are not, because it is a small group that, again, there was a lot of, if you recall, initially, we said anyone that wants to be part of this. So a group is formed. Tom and I, at the agreement of this board, Tom and I represent the select board at those meetings. There are community groups there. There are emergency management people. There's health department. There are there's a fair amount of expertise. And once we finish putting something together, it'll come back, and that is when the public will have input. But right now, it's things like, at what point is it considered emergency cold? At what point is it considered emergency heat? How does that differ in Albany? How does that differ in Burlington? I mean...
And those things have to be established, otherwise you don't have a go-forward
What about the rest of us on the board? Do we know when these meetings are so we can go?
Nancy, we already have that conversation. So Tom and I were chosen to represent this board at those meetings. We can't all go because then it becomes a warned select board meeting.
Is there a community organizer at the meetings?
Yes,
Okay.
there's several community organizers.
Well,
at the
no,
meeting.
I'm talking specifically about a community organizer hired to come to Bennington.
For what?
I'll talk to you afterwards, because this needs to come onto an agenda, but,
No, I have no idea what you're talking about.
okay, well, I'll tell you after the meeting.
Okay.
I don't want to put the
Okay.
person on the spot.
Okay. Community organizer. Okay. All right. Who else? What else? What else? What else is out there? Please, come on up. Shirley, wait. There's,
Go ahead.
Come on down.
there's a new person.
I just want to give some feedback.
Oh, could you give your...
Did I shut it off?
No, could you give your name and...
Yes, it's Bob Ward from Bennington.
Thank you.
I just want to give some feedback on the Benmont Ave. I was a school bus driver for 3 years, and that intersection was horrible, unsafe. I've seen numerous collisions and, pedestrians being very unsafe running across the street there. There was no exit or entrance to those businesses there. Now they got 3 curb cuts, traffic is controlled. So all the negative about it, it was badly needed there. So thank you for the highway department, and thank you for the town for doing that.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts. All right, Shirley. Oh, you're the person that we make get up and down.
That's okay. I'm going to second that. I drive that intersection that comes into Benmont near the bus company, and turning onto Benmont is much safer. I know which way to look for traffic now, so just my opinion. I also wanted to point out something. We were talking about the police department, and I just wanted to point out, I know Jeannie knows this, last year the police department was funded an additional FTE for an outreach person that comes and assists them for people when they're in circumstances that aren't really police matters. And I just wanted to point that out. The city is doing some things that are just socially correct.
That's great, Shirley. And the other funding stream is a victim's advocate that is specific to work with individuals who've been trafficked.
Yeah, and I think that's really important because we're short on police officers, and they should be doing police work, not necessarily some of the social community work that they run into all the time. And then just one other topic, Stu left, but about a year ago or so, he talked a little bit about property reassessments for the grand list, and it's been a year or so. I'd just be interested in hearing about that, and I know maybe you don't have the information, but we could ask Stu.
We've not had a conversation about that. At the time, I believe there were 3 assessors for the entire state, and because of COVID, virtually every single town needs to be reassessed. Mary, Representative Morrissey, I'm sort of putting you on the spot. Do you have any comments Or Jim, do you have any comments about what's happening with the reassessment?
The legislature addressed some of that this year. They're wanting most towns throughout the state to have a reassessment. There have been some pieces put into place in regards to that, so I think it will be rolling out within the year.
Do we have more assessors, or are we still at?
That's the struggle. We still don't have a lot of access to assessors.
Okay, all right. Jim, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I can only add to what Representative Morrissey.
Do you want to come up?
Insofar as, it comes down to training for these assessors.
Okay.
And, there's a paucity of people that are capable of doing it now.
Let me just make a comment on this topic because I think it's very important. And Shirley, thank you for raising the issue. Reassessment is needed because of the disparity in property value. We all agree on that. What I think I think there's a disconnect on a reassessment and the amount of taxes that we pay at the end of the day. Our taxes are not going to go up because of a reassessment. The rate changes when our home values go up, if they do. I would assume that many home values in Bennington are under assessed right now because the assessments are old and because of what happened during the COVID boom, as we like to refer to it. The municipal budget is a municipal budget. If your house is worth more next year because it was reassessed, it doesn't mean that the municipality spends more. So please be aware of the fact that the two do not go together. That makes sense? Really
if your house
important.
goes from $150,000 to $225,000, your taxes are going to go up.
Nancy, that's categorically not true.
Yeah, Jim, did you?
Of course it is, Ed.
Jim?
Yeah, I just want to, I'm recalling some things that were talked about in Montpelier over the last year or so, and that is, Ed, you pointed out the rise in, well, the overvaluing of properties after COVID, because people were moving here because it's a wonderful place, and don't take my word for it, people were buying homes sight unseen over the phone, and there was a bidding war, and the real value of those homes technically hadn't changed, but the selling price just jacked that up. So there, to the best of my recollection, there's a real reluctance to go in to a reassessment statewide. First of all, it's a really enormous and complicated process, but there's a reluctance to go in there when the market is way, way, way up here and doesn't actually reflect reality.
It doesn't accomplish what the goal was. That's a very good point.
So I'm interested, if my house is worth $150,000 and Clark's is worth $225,000, Clark's not paying more in taxes than I am?
That's not what I said. Let me make myself clear. Let me answer your question,
Okay.
Nancy. You just put it on the table. Today, your house is worth $150,000 and Clark's is worth $225,000. Right?
Yep.
He pays more taxes than you do.
Yep.
Next year, your house becomes worth $225,000 and his becomes worth $275,000. That does not mean that either of your tax bills go up. It still takes the same $100 to run the municipality, and the 100 is, a made-up number. This is basic taxes. I would encourage you to study it before you mislead the public.
Not Clark.
So may I please, we're here for a listening session for the public. We're not here for our
We are,
board.
Sarah, thank you.
Yes, so we're here for the public right now. We're not
And
here
they're
for a
asking
board
about the
conversation.
the reappraisal, how it's going to impact homeowners, property owners.
I think the question, I think the point that Ed is the point Ed is trying to make is that because your house is worth more, the town's budget is not going to double. We're not going to look at.
I understand that, but the public has to understand. Their taxes will go up when the value of their home, and we have to be aware. Many people are tapped out. They're not going to have that money. So we have to look at every dollar we're spending now.
Taxes are not going up as a result of reassessment.
I'm not saying that, Ed. The point I'm making, many homeowners are tapped out. With the reappraisal, many are wiped out. People should watch the meeting they held in Putney, where people are being driven out because of their...
I'm going to withdraw from the conversation because I'm not getting through to you.
Okay, so are there other, yes, Debbie. Do you want to be a Debbie or a Deb?
I don't care, just don't call me.
Well, if I say Deb, you come up and say Debbie, and if I say Debbie, you're a Deb, so I'm like...
For dinner?
Just don't call me late for dinner.
Okay.
I've been called a lot of things, I'll tell you. So I want to get back to the police. I don't know exactly how long they've been shorthanded.
Long time.
And if...
That I know of, and probably longer than that.
Much longer than that, yeah.
And I don't know... I heard a rumor, it's probably true, that we lost an officer to the school as a resource officer because that job pays more?
It pays more when you extrapolate out summers off.
So I was wondering if there wasn't some way, because that's something I've heard periodically, that's one of the reasons why we can't get officers is because of the pay they're getting, and that we get some in and we seem to get them through the training process and they get all certified or whatever, and then they pay more, so that now we've trained them and we've lost them. Is there any way we can squeeze some money out of our town budget without increasing the taxes? There's got to be something we can dump somewhere to pay these officers a better wage, which I think will help on the drug thing.
So, you know, this is a conversation that we have every single year. I mean, you know, when we talk with staff, they are always doing more with less. The reason that we do projects in-house is because it's cheaper than contracting with somebody to come in and do the projects. The fact that we did the sewage treatment plant, you know, basically in-house, that saved us millions of dollars. So
the fact that we have a bridge foreman now, not to interrupt you,
Yeah.
and now we're doing bridge work and bridge supervision on our own without hiring an outside contractor.
So this town is extremely frugal. Sometimes we've been able to do something because we do budget for a full police department, and we don't always have, you know, hire all the officers. So sometimes we have a little extra money, but, you know, the conversation that we have every year is, can we pay them more? If you look at their benefits, we increased benefits, which, you know, which is a big deal, and we were able to do that at a lower cost than increasing salary, and in some ways it has a bigger benefit because you're getting health benefits and vision and dental along with medical. But, you know, I think it's a tough thing, and it's a conversation that we've already sort of informally started having. You know, you got to pull from somewhere. Jim, you're desperate to say something.
I just want to address Deb's question, and this was brought up at a couple of budget meetings over the last several years. And Paul, the chief, came to us and he said that other departments, the state police among them, and other places were poaching our police officers. We put them through all that training, and they come in and say, hey, we got a better deal for you. And, you know, it's hard to turn down $15,000 or $20,000 additional salary. And I think if memory serves me, we actually okayed an increase, not to the level that, you know, these other poachers were doing, but
That's exactly what they are.
That's what they're doing.
Let me just tell you the flip side of this. I had the pleasure of meeting 2 or 3 new recruits on election day in March who were working, through the polls with us. 2 of them are commuting from out of state, or were at that time, and working on relocating here because the pay and benefits are better here than they were in neighboring communities across the state lines.
It's expensive.
There's something to be said there about the fact that we were able to recruit these folks, and our hope is that they would relocate. They're young, they are family age, and that's benefits are extremely important, and I think that ours are better than others. Not to tell you that I haven't heard the same things in all of my work with the police department in the last few years about poachers and reasons that people leave. We don't pay as much as other towns in Vermont, and we can't offer some of the benefits of other jobs like summers off. So Deb, I remember that example very, very clearly. I was very frustrated when I heard that happened.
Yeah, also cars.
Yeah.
Cars.
We can't have officers take cars. Yeah, go Clark.
Well, what we're describing, name one business that doesn't want the best employees they can get. We recruit good people. Because we recruit good people, it's fertile pickings. So, we can't have one without the other. And yes, money and benefits are good, and when you're young, which all of us, I think, once were, we can see what's right in front of us, but we don't see what's down the hall. So I think a lot of these young folks who were looking at moving on haven't had to pay for college tuition, orthodontia, and all that stuff. So benefits to these young people isn't really, I think, as attractive as it is for the more mature employee. But my observation, no matter where I've been, any element of my career, young, smart, hardworking people, who doesn't want them? So, we recruit good people, and the fact they come here to poach our people tells us, in my mind, we're doing a good job on the people we're bringing on board.
That's a very good point. Let me raise one other issue on this, and then maybe we can move on. This board did a study of reasons that people leave their positions if they are town employees, and that included the police department. And it was interesting to find that the reason that our officers have left over the recent past, and I think we went back 3 years, if I'm not mistaken, was retirement, was family relocation. There were those that were poached, and there's no hiding that. If you look across the national statistics, it is a troubled profession. And so we are in a similar situation to most states, if not all states across the country. It's one of those professions that, we say post-COVID a lot in today's world. I don't know if that's really the reason for it, but there's people much smarter than me looking at that problem. And we're listening as a town and as elected officials, we're listening to the data and adjusting as we can.
Other questions? Or Jim?
Not so much questions, but to address some of the points that have been brought up, chiefly by Nancy and Clark. And this goes back to, oh, she's gone. Mrs. Clark.
Shirley's on this side.
Oh, there you go. Mrs. Clark came to me about approximately 2 years ago about the idea of confining the money for homeless people to Vermonters. I thought that was a great idea. So I introduced a piece of legislation, and it was brought before the Human Services Committee, and Legislative Council shot it down because the Constitution prohibits anyone from having a place to live.
State or federal?
Federal.
Thank you.
And I begged and argued with the Human Services Board to throw it at the wall and see if it sticks. Because in other cases, particularly with a bill that was introduced about preventing suicide, it was spoken on the House floor that it was unconstitutional, it would be struck down, but the argument for passing it, which it did pass, was that if we save 200, 300, 400, if it's somebody you love, then it's worth it. So I would love to have seen that pass, because as you said, Nancy, we ought to take care of our own first.
So they're saying that Vermonters paying for 2 different free motel room programs, we can't limit it to Vermonters?
Yep.
Well, then I guess that I know what that means.
Well,
I mean, how many other states in the country are giving free motel programs?
No, this had to do with federal funds.
Yeah.
It didn't even have to do with federal funds. It was funding, period. You can't deny people a place to live. That's what it came down to.
But how many states in the country do the free motel?
Well, from what I remember that the Legislative Council told us is that this is countrywide. You can't deny.
Every state, but what I'm saying.
You can't deny people a place to live.
But I'm saying.
Clark is trying to say something.
On a similar vein, I moved up from Connecticut, and Connecticut used to have a law where veterans, people who served from Connecticut, joined up, came home, went to school, they exclusively were given certain breaks on taxpayer. That was struck down in federal court because it discriminated against other veterans. And so, it's not unique to the housing situation, but it is, as we all know, common sense isn't necessarily a common trait. And it would seem to me that us spells, us, but the government, the courts don't see it that way. Again, letter writing, we got to write letters.
One other point that you brought up, Nancy, and that was about the money that goes into rehabs. I remember several years ago, there was a place right adjacent to the old still the elementary school. This little house. My mother used to get her hair done there. And they were small apartments, 1-bedroom apartments, $175,000 that the feds demanded went into the rehab of a 1-bedroom apartment. And one of the local plumbers, who's a good friend of mine, I had suggested that he take advantage of it. I mean, the money is going to be spent. He called me and he said, do you realize this is stupid money that they're spending, but it's a federal guidelines. And we cannot do that locally. We can't change that. There's Peter Welch and Becca Ballant and Bernie Sanders that have to do that. I mean, it's ridiculous, that kind of money. But but here's the flip side of that. If we want to rehab those blighted properties that are here in town, if we don't take advantage of that money, somebody else is. And we desperately need that housing.
Well, but Jim, you have to remember, people who lived in Bennington remember 20 years ago, school offered us the Ben High for $1. Stu said we couldn't afford it. He was probably right. But ever since that day, Stu and every Bennington Select Board has said the same thing. The town of Bennington taxpayers are not responsible for the Ben High. It's a private building. That never changed. When the public found out 6 or 7 years ago, officials got a grant to do big studies, people were angry. They said, what are you doing? Don't worry, it won't cost the taxpayers. Well, here we are right now. And like I said, if anybody thinks that contract is going to get changed, you, the taxpayer, all of us who pay taxes, crazy money, ridiculous for what they want to change and charge us. All the promises the people of Bennington, most of them will be broken. Our taxpayers cannot pay this.
I do want to remind us that we already had that conversation about the fact that we have not seen the materials from
Well, I can
the
go
Hales yet.
through the
Nancy,
list of what we were promised, Jeannie.
Sweetie, sorry. Nancy, you know as well as everyone else at this table that the final materials from Hale Resources is not available yet. So it is really premature to have a conversation about materials we have not seen.
And I've been asking the board since January of last year, please get the Ben High on more agendas. The public has to understand what you are asking them to pay for. Most people don't understand what they're going to pay for.
We thought we would have that at a Monday meeting. We've discussed this for way too long tonight. When the data is available from Hale, it will get on the agenda as you have asked. It has been on the agenda whenever there has been data to share with this board and the public.
And I believe this will be the 6th public hearing or public presentation by the Hales on this project. So it's not that they are not sharing information, and all the prior information is there, and you can see the funding streams and where we are in process.
And the
So please-
changes are going to hit the town taxpayers hard.
Okay.
I want to answer one final question that both Deb and, well, two Debs brought up, and that was about Pleasant Street. I don't live very far from there, and you're right, some parts about aren't very pleasant. And I want to draw a contrast between that and Shires. And I was a swing vote back in 2012, brought $7 million in for Shires housing, and man, it was a tough vote. But I voted for it. And the thing that tipped me over the edge was that Shires requires a criminal and a credit background check. If you don't pass, you don't live there. And if we could get landlords, and I'm not going to point any fingers at anybody specifically, if we could get them to do the same thing, I think things might change.
Thank you, Chair.
Just to belabor the point, I spoke with Mr. Hale. Again, we've had many conversations, and he pointed out to me that even in terms of financing these grants, or even going to banks, there's a thrust now, instead of rehabbing a lot of these buildings, which I see these big, beautiful buildings around town, which I think would be great, it's just, he can't, because of regulations and bank policies, they'd rather him tear those things down and put new construction than rehab those. So, we're dealing with a multi-headed monster here. And, people in this room clearly care and want to just cut to the chase and get things done. There's no straight roads. Everything we got to do loops back over in another area of complication and regulation. And somehow, we collectively have to slay this multi-headed monster, because it's killing us. Trying to help people, it's amazing how hard we have to work to help people, because of the very people who allegedly their job is to help us to help people. But that's just my observation.
I got one more point that I want to address to what Clark said, and I heard this on Vermont Public Radio this week. And here's the conundrum. If we go in and rehab, like the Putnam Block, that's on the, Historic Places Registry?
National Registry.
Yes, and there are strict parameters about what you can do. You have to keep, the Putnam Block had to keep the same energy inefficient windows there. It's ridiculous. And for some places out in the Midwest, what they're doing, and because housing's an issue all over the country, they're tearing down these places. And what's become more affordable and easier to do, especially with zoning and other parameters, particularly, and I think it would make sense in the state of Vermont, is they're building modular buildings. They're pre-approved. They meet all the federal and state requirements for housing. And, it would be sad to lose that visual and architectural history in our town, in our state. But, man, like Mike said a little while ago, you got to do it or get off the pot. We need housing desperately. And one of the first things that I learned in the Commerce Committee, which I serve on, is that the greatest impediment to economic growth in the state of Vermont is a lack of housing. Tom D. and I had a conversation over 10 years ago, and he said, doctors at that time, and I don't think it's changed, want to come to Bennington, but the housing isn't there. And they'll go somewhere else.
As you know, they're trying to get a residency program here to train family physicians. We're trying to attract young physicians who want to bring their families here and live here. I worked for almost 20 years with a residency program. These folks have children, they have spouses, and usually their spouses are educated professional people. Yep. We somehow have to make housing and the amenities that young professional families are seeking. And it starts off with a safe, available housing. I won't say affordable because we all know doctors make a lot of money. I'm being a wise guy. But yeah, we got to do something. We're strangling ourselves with our own rope. And I don't have the answer other than the fact that we got to take out some scissors and cut them. And, you know, I can't say it enough. Not to pick on Jim or Mary, but we got to hammer Montpelier and we got to hammer Mr. Sanders, Mr. Welch, and Ms. Bailett, because, you know, the federal regulations are, in my mind, almost insurmountable unless somebody stands up and takes a chainsaw to it and cut to the chase.
I do want to remind us that Mr. Bolio came and is doing a housing development. We do need more, and that the went through Planning Commission, and we were very supportive of his work as well. You know, we do need more developers. We do need more housing developers in this neck of the woods. So, you know, we've got some properties, and I will say Ben High has been able to work around the historic preservation, to meet the historic preservation criteria and still put in efficiency in the windows. So yeah, I don't want you to like have a heart attack in the back row. So, you know, I think it is possible to do it, but yeah, it's more expensive when you are working around a bunch of criteria, but it's also a lot more soulful when you have beautiful buildings to look at. You know,
so the flip side of that is, on housing, I was in a conversation 6-8 months ago with a local realtor who told me that she either was aware of or had listing on a large parcel in Shaftesbury that was prime for development. 15 houses, 20 houses. Imagine what an actual planned community like that could look like. The cost to bring utilities was so astronomical that it was difficult to market the property. I think that I may have read that property sold recently, so I'll be paying close attention to that. But that would be a clean piece of property where it would make perfect sense, Jim, the solution that you talked about. We still have to get supporting utilities to that area.
You know, in his last two budgets.
You have to speak into the mic.
In his last two budgets, and Mary can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was, I think, to the tune of $125 million to go towards new housing. And some of that money, I can't give you a firm answer, but if you know this person, whomever that is, have him call the governor's office, or I don't know who specifically. There might be money available to get that done.
Thank you.
And you know, if you don't ask, you don't get.
You don't, yep.
all right, other issues that we want to address tonight.
Yeah.
What stone is left unturned?
I have one, again. Has nothing to do with what we're doing here, but I think it's important, especially since everyone's very familiar with CAT TV and their great services to the community. I might get choked up. Jim Vines left us. And he's a good man who cared for us in this town, and he will be missed.
And I do want to say that that is why we were missing one member tonight. It's just, yeah, they were very close.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. And thanks very much, Josh, for doing this, because I know it's not an easy thing for you to be doing today either. All right. So we know that there will be some tributes to Jim over the next couple days. We were all very, very, very fond of him. So anything else before we call this meeting to a close? Mary?
While we wait for Mary to get to the podium, I just want to say that I feel the same charge of energy that I felt after the last session, and I'm grateful for the folks that come here and speak up and speak out. Agree, disagree, we can, and this is the place to have those conversations, and I encourage everybody to keep participating. This is awesome. I'm looking at each one of you individually. Thank you.
Thank you.
My simple question is, I've had a couple of folks in the Upper Gage Street area ask about when they might get paved. Is there a schedule coming or out there?
There is a schedule. I mean, it resides with the town staff. What I would suggest is have them call the town office, and they can get a specific answer.
It's just that some of the folks are older and have missed kind of the summer of walking up and down their street, and they just asked because the sidewalks had some damage too.
So is it the sidewalks or the road?
No, it's the whole upper
It's the whole thing.
It's the whole thing.
Street
Okay.
needs to be paved, but also the sidewalks and some of where the where you pull into your driveway is not good.
It's difficult to walk on that street. I use that as a loop because it's a great walking loop.
Yeah.
And it is difficult to walk on that street. You find yourself weaving around telephone poles that
Right.
are in strange places because you can't follow. Yeah.
Right.
I got an answer for,
Oh, you know?
because I addressed this with Stu because I met a resident of Gage Street at
Okay, great.
McDonald's. And she told me about the problems there, and at that time, this was about a month ago, dust. And they had oiled the street to keep the dust down, but it had rain, we'd had a heavy rain and it washed it away. At any rate, I called Stu and I said, what's the plan on this? And he said, well, we're not going to be able to get to the road surface until this coming spring at the earliest, or the summer. But what Stu said it will be done is the dirt will be dug up, and there's a hard pack. It's actually repurposed blacktop.
Ground pavement.
Yeah, and that'll be in place to keep down the dust. But, this particular lady, and I'm sure this was probably true, the people that Mary spoke with, they couldn't open their windows. They couldn't open their car windows because the dust was so nasty. And, what I want to point out to those people, anybody who's listening, really, if we're public servants, and it's the greatest honor that I think I'll ever have, and I think that goes for everybody sitting here. Call them, make them earn their $106 a month.
107.
All right. That's what we're here for. That's what we're here for.
Can I ask you, Jim, is the hard pack going in before the snow flies?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
He didn't,
Okay.
Stu did not have a specific time frame, but he said definitely it would be
Okay.
for the snow flies.
Okay.
So it is being addressed.
And we need to find out if that was supposed to have been blacktopped, because I think it's nonsense that's going to be there for the winter, and I hope they weren't tied up on all these other projects
No,
so that they couldn't
Nancy,
finish this one.
I asked about that as well.
What do you say?
It's a private, that particular project was a private company because it was federal dollars. It was about the lead abatement pipes, and those contracts went to a private company.
Well, the private company works for the
You're
town
right,
of Bennington.
exactly. And Stu, with the phone call that I had, or probably others as well,
Wasn't
we held the people
wasn't that a
to
bond?
account.
Wasn't that a bond up there?
I'm not sure. No, well, yes, it was a bond, but it didn't cost the town anything because it was federal dollars. But yes, it was a bond that essentially was, hand washing. But it went out to a private bid, and it was a private company. And the private company weren't addressing the concerns of the residents up there. And I took this lady coming to me to get it addressed. And again, I want to emphasize again, if you're having a problem, call these people, call me, call Mary. Well, I won't volunteer for her.
She's raising her hands.
Okay, but, that's what we're here for.
Yeah, and this is why the select board needs to be involved and know what's going on, because to me, it's unacceptable. And if we hired a private company and said it's got to be done by X day and it's not, well, they're going to get penalized and charged for it. They started that. They had that ripped up in June, if not May, didn't they? Yeah, I apologize to people on Upper Gage Street. It should have been blacktopped. And that's where this board has to be on top of it. And for the budget, I'm going to want from each department, each project they want to work on, and what each project is going to cost the taxpayers. So that we're going to know ahead of time and everybody can know, here's the projects that are going to get done. Because we have to, like everybody said, we need priorities.
So I think we want to just reiterate that all those lists are public, so all you need to do is call, and you can, or walk in. They're public lists, so none of this is private.
Well,
any more questions? Right? This has been a great listening session. We have learned a lot. We've got lots of notes, and I want to make sure, anything else on your mind that we want to get to tonight? All right, then I'll ask for a motion.
For those folks that didn't speak, I'm glad that you came to listen, and I hope that listening was helpful as well. I make a motion that we adjourn if we're all ready.
And feel free to contact email if you're just to, think of something later.
Absolutely.
All right, could we have a second for the motion? Thank you. All right. Any discussion on adjourning? All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you all very, very much.